Hello, my name is Alicia and I am here to teach you Brazilian Portuguese. So in this mini course, you're going to learn the basics of the Brazilian Portuguese language, and we're going to start with the greetings and some useful phrases so you can start speaking right away. And we are also going to learn the sounds of Brazilian Portuguese. And I must stress that we are going to learn Brazilian Portuguese because what you learn here in this course will be useful when you talk to any native Portuguese speaker, okay? You can talk with people from Portugal using what you learn here, it's no problem. But I was born in Brazil, so I speak Brazilian Portuguese and I teach it too. So the sounds of Brazilian Portuguese are a little different from the sounds of European Portuguese, and some grammar aspects also are different. But don't worry, you'll be able to communicate with any native Portuguese speakers with the knowledge that you will acquire in this mini course. So let's begin with our, greetings. Cumprimentar os cumprimentos. And we'll begin with oi. Oi is just what you have when you greet anyone in Brazil. It's informal, but we Brazilians, we are very informal too. So it is not impolite to say oi to anyone, okay? It's like hello, hey in English. Oi. And if you want to be a little more specific, you can say bom dia. This is what you say during the day. In the afternoon, you can also say boa tarde. And after dark, you will say good evening, good night. And in Portuguese, you say boa noite. Okay, I'm going to repeat this in a bit, but pay attention, stay with me because we are going to make a full conversation. Okay, so we have already greeted and now we want to ask, how are you doing? In Portuguese, you say como vai? And, you will answer with bem. Bem is okay, I am doing well, I'm good. And you must also say thank you to be polite. To say thank you in Portuguese, you have two different words depending on your gender. So if you are a man, you say obrigado, thank you. And if you are a woman, you say obrigada, also thank you, okay? But it depends on your own gender. Bem, obrigado, obrigada. If you are not doing so good, you may say normal, obrigado, obrigada. Also possible and polite. And, it's enough for today. We have already chatted too much, so let's say goodbye. And we say até logo. If you want to say that, you can. Até logo. And you may also say adeus. Adeus is a little formal, but you can say because it's very short. Adeus. And adeus may be a final goodbye, okay? You can say that if you're never going to see the person again. You can, but not necessarily. So you can say adeus to the mailman, okay? And if someone said até logo to you, you may reply by saying até, because it's short and simple. So you can have a full conversation in Brazilian Portuguese, greeting with oi, and responding to até logo with até. Okay, you see, short and simple. So let's see all these expressions one more time. Oi, bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite. Como vai? Bem, obrigado, obrigada. Normal, obrigado, obrigada. Até logo. Adeus. Até. Okay? You see, in a couple of minutes, you have learned how to make a full conversation on the elevator with your neighbor. All of these are expressions that you can use in your daily life. And now let's learn some polite phrases in Portuguese that are really important. In Portuguese, importante. So you may want to say, please, por favor. And as you already know, obrigado, obrigada means thank you. The response to thank you in Portuguese is de nada. And if you make a mistake, you say perdão. I am sorry, pardon. And the reaction will be não tem problema. We're going to repeat. But after that, before that, we're going to see sim, which is in Portuguese yes, e não, which is in Portuguese no. Okay? So pay attention because sim, não, they have nasal sounds. We're going to learn how to make the sounds in Portuguese in a bit. Okay? So let's repeat. Importante. Por favor. Obrigado, obrigada. De nada. Perdão. Não tem problema. Sim, não. All right? Well, you have some exercises to practice all this information. I know it was a lot in short minutes, but you can pause the video and do the exercises because they have the answers. You can download all this information and you also have extra material to practice this new vocabulary. Okay, everything is included in the mini course. And let's learn new things like the alphabet, o alfabeto. And the letters in Portuguese, we will refer to them by saying o A, o B, and so on. O means that it's the masculine article. Okay, in English it would be the. Okay, but in Portuguese we say o A. Okay, the letter A. And the letters will be the following. Just pay attention to my voice. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. And also C cedilha. You see that, Brazilian or Portuguese alphabet is a little different from the English, and I am not going to name the letters in English to you. I'm going to name them in Portuguese always. Why? Because in English you have a more complicated system of sounds. Okay? In Portuguese, you have to handle all the sounds that Portuguese has to offer to you. So don't try to take sounds from English and get them in the Portuguese. It doesn't work like this. You have some sounds that are the sounds of Portuguese and you have to work with them. Don't try to get English sounds into Portuguese. There may be coincidences. There are letters and sounds that are the same in both languages, but do not transfer what you do in English or in your native language, tongue, if you are not an English native speaker. Don't try to, insert the sounds of your language into Portuguese. Just work with the sounds that I am showing you, okay? And this is especially important when you are using the vowels in Portuguese, okay? So just stay with the sounds of vowels that we have in Portuguese. And we have A and we also have E. Okay, so for this letter you may pronounce it both ways, E. Okay? And for this other letter you also have O, two possible sounds, but not more, okay? So let's work with what Portuguese has to offer, which is a lot, okay? Well, so do the exercises to help you memorize the names of the letters in Portuguese. And we are going to learn now the vowels, because we love vowels in Brazil, okay? One of the main differences between the sounds of Brazilian Portuguese and European Portuguese is that we Brazilians, we love vowels, and we tend to put vowels sometimes even where they aren't written, okay? We just insert a vowel so the words sound well, more nice to us, okay? And in Portuguese, they may do the opposite. So they see a vowel and they will not pronounce it. Why? Because they are, well, they think differently. But we Brazilians, we love vowels. So let's learn the vowels together. Don't worry about the example words. They are just examples. But if you want to learn them, you have material to do that. So let's begin with com, sem. And this means with and without. Because here you have A com acento agudo. So the letter A has here this little symbol on top. And this is called acento agudo. What does it do? Well, the sound is an open sound, what you have here with this acento, okay? And you also have A com acento grave. You see, it's looking the other way. And the sound is also open, okay? But you will have other little symbols like this one, which has the name tio. So this is A com tio. And the sound is nasal. As I warned you before, we love nasal sounds. And we also have this letter A com circunflexo. And the sound will be close. Okay? I know it sounds a little strange if you put it like this, but it's the way the language is organized. So we're going to see examples of this, don't worry. And acento is what you see here, okay? A com acento, you see the acento here. But if you say accent, when you mean in English, you speak with an accent, in Portuguese we say sotaque, okay? So everybody has a sotaque. So my sotaque is from São Paulo because I'm from São Paulo, okay? But what you learn here is general Brazilian. Don't worry, okay? You can talk to Brazilians using what you learn in this mini course, and also, as I told you, with other native Portuguese speakers. The communication is always very, very smooth in Portuguese, okay? It doesn't matter if you talk Brazilian or European Portuguese, we can communicate with each other. So there is something that you must know is that the way to pronounce vowels can vary in the different regions of Brazil. It doesn't make communication difficult, not at all, okay? But if you're traveling in Brazil, you may see that people tend to, well, pronounce the vowels a little bit different, okay? For instance, in the northeast of Brazil, people tend to open the vowels, and in more southern regions, people tend to close them. But this is just a tiny thing that, well, won't mean any trouble to you, don't worry, okay? So we're going to see that in Portuguese, the vowels can be open or close. What is the difference? Well, the difference is our mouth. If the mouth is very open, the sound is also open. This is what you have in casa. So my mouth is very open, wide in ca, but then I close it a little bit to say za. Casa. It's the same letter, A, but it's open and then it's closed. Casa. Okay? And, well, this happens. I know at the beginning you're, well, just getting to know a new language, it can be a little overwhelming. I know that, okay? So it will be overwhelming with any language that you're learning for the first time, okay? But don't worry, these ideas, well, just let them get settled in your head. And when you see many examples, then everything will sound more natural to you, because this is one of the secrets of learning a new language. You have to learn, well, the theory, that's why I'm here, but you should also get in touch with the language. So be in contact with Portuguese. Anything will do. Just listen to music, watch some TV, listen to podcasts. You don't have to understand the meaning of what people are saying to you. It's not important. It's important to you that you just absorb the sounds of Portuguese. And when you absorb them, it will be easier for you to identify them and also to pronounce these sounds yourself. Okay, so it's a very helpful tip. Listen to music. Well, it's free and it doesn't cost you anything. It's fun And it's a great way to improve your pronunciation passively, because most things that you do when you learn a language, they are unconscious. Okay, so listening to music is a great way to learn unconsciously and to identify the sounds in Portuguese. Okay, so let's move on to some examples. Here you have the 5 vowels, and all of them have acento agudo. And what this means is that we are going to have an open sound, as I told you before. Rádio. My mouth is okay? Rádio. And if you have the vowels e o with circunflexo, the sound will be close. So you say câmera. Okay, my mouth is, well, not so open. And this couple of words, they are very, very interesting in Portuguese because they have opposite meanings, but they are very similar. So to grandmother in Portuguese, you say avó. And to grandfather, you say avô. The difference is, well, my mouth. So avó, avô. Avó, avô. You see? Open, close. Avó, avô. And this is how it works. Okay? Well, so let's learn some new stuff. Like, for instance, and this is very, very important, all vowels before M or N are nasal. And this is what we do automatically. As Brazilians, we tend to make a lot of nasal sounds, even more than people from Portugal. Okay? And especially in São Paulo, where I come from. So my Portuguese is very, very nasal. And, well, you will have, for the word bed in Portuguese, cama. Why do we say cama? Because here you have the letter M, and the vowel right before that will be nasal, cama. How do you know that you're making a nasal sound? Well, you notice that the air is going upwards, okay? The air is being lifted to your nose. And this is why you feel like a heat in this region, okay? When you say cama, it's a little warm here. And you also may feel a vibration, okay? So this means that you're making a nasal sound. Nasal sounds, they exist also in English, but they are not so strong as in Portuguese. The word English is a little nasal. So you have to do the same thing that you do in English when you say English, but you have to, wow, make it with gusto, okay? So you say cama, okay? Very, very strong, okay? And this is how it's done, okay? Well, so let's move forward to these letters, U, okay? Because you have tio, and tio is always nasal. So you have the words leão, leões, leão, leões, lion, lions. As you see, in English it's a little nasal, but in Portuguese you go and, well, you will make it really nasal, okay? Leão, leões. And, well, there might be exceptions. Generally, we tend to do so, but not always, okay? Because, well, in the languages, sometimes it works like this, okay? We have rules and we have exceptions. And so you know that we really love vowels in Brazil. I have an example of a sentence only with vowels that makes complete sense in Brazilian Portuguese. And the sentence is this. O, uauê, aí, ó. Uauê é o uó. What does it mean? It means, look at the fuss over there. The fuss is the worst. So, well, it's two lines in English, and in Portuguese, just vowels and one line. And this is what we are saying, okay? I'll say it again with the normal, well, Brazilian way of saying that. O uauê aí, ó. Uauê é o ó. I repeat. O uauê aí, ó. Uauê é o ó. You see, it's beautiful, just vowels, okay? We do not need much more to speak and to make sense, okay? So, love the vowels as we Brazilians do in order to speak better Portuguese. And as I told you, there are exceptions to this nasalization here, but normally we do nasalize a lot. And another general principle for Brazilian Portuguese is that the letter E at the end of the word is pronounced as I. So you're going to say tarde, noite. Both words, we saw them at the beginning of the video. Tarde, noite. And the letter O at the end of the word is pronounced as U. So you're going to say obrigado como logo. Okay, generally so. And also words that we have already seen. And now let's see a little bit of the stress in Portuguese, but do not feel stressed out because it's going to be really, really simple, okay? A pronúncia, a acentuação. And you have the general principle that is, if the word has an accent, there is the stressed syllable. What is the stressed syllable? Well, when we speak in Portuguese, we will stress one syllable in each word. So we have a rhythm, so we have a melody when we speak. We do not talk like robots. We do not speak mechanically. We do have some melody, okay? And the melody of Brazilian is the result of a couple of rules that you're going to see right now. So it's important for you to know them in order to speak more like a native would. So if you see this acento, any acento in Portuguese, you know that you're going to stress this syllable. So you're going to say música, perdão, metrô, and this is the way to pronounce it, okay? And it doesn't matter how long the word is. You see acento and then you go and stress this syllable. For instance, when you say cobblestone in Portuguese, you say paralelepípedo. It's very long. Most Brazilian words aren't that long, but here you see that the acento is in P, so you stress it. Paralelepípedo. And you are done. Okay? Don't forget this and try to remember this. If a word ends in a, e, o, as, is, os, em, we stress the second to last syllable. It doesn't matter how long a word is, you see these endings, so you're going to stress not the last syllable, but the syllable before that. That's what you do when you say obrigada, tarde, obrigado. You see, there is like a rhythm that's very constant in Portuguese. Why? Because many words have these endings, so they are going to be stressed in the second to last syllable. Obrigada, tarde, obrigado. So this is one of the reasons why Brazilian sounds so sing-songy, so it sounds really cute and nice because it's very regular. It has a nice sounding melody, and also we love vowels, and vowels make our language sound open. Okay, so I believe that you like the way Brazilian sounds, and a couple of reasons for that are these that I just explained to you. Okay, so now we're going to see how to pronounce the consonants in Portuguese. A pronúncia, as consoantes. And, well, let's see that in all these combinations you have the sound of G. Here I put the symbol in the International Phonetical Alphabet. If you do not want to manage the symbol, just ignore it, okay? I'll put it here so it can be easier for you, but if it's not easier, just let it go, okay? And you have here that in all these combinations the sound will be G, okay? So G in all of them. And the combinations of letters, I will say in Portuguese, are GA, GO, GU, GUE, GUI. And in GUE, GUI, the letter U is silent, so it's going to be written but not pronounced. Which is why we're going to see the examples here that are names of people, but just pay attention to how my voice sounds. Gabriel, Diego, Gustavo, Miguel, Guilherme. You see, with Miguel, Guilherme, we did write U, but we did not pronounce it. Okay? And, well, let's learn that there are exceptions to this rule because, well, rules, exceptions, well, sometimes it happens, okay? But generally in the language, U is silent in these combinations. And, well, we're going to see that in all these combinations, the sound will be j, like you have in French when you say jour, okay? So in all these combinations, J-A, J-E, J-I, J-O, J-U, G-E, G-I, you are going to pronounce J. Janaína, João, Júlia, Gilberto, Geraldo. Okay? So, J, J, J all the time. And, well, when you have these combinations here, the sound will be K. So, you have C-A, Q-A, C-O, Q-O, e C-U. Q-E, Q-I. And in these combinations, Q-E, Q-I, pay attention, the U is silent. It's going to be written but not pronounced. So you're going to have K, K, K. So the following names are Carlos, Marcos, Custódio, Henrique, Quitéria. This is what we have. Okay? Well, not so difficult. You just have to get used to a couple of rules, okay? But as I told you, listen to Portuguese and it will be easier for you. As I told you, well, rules, exceptions, but generally it's the way it works. And here you have the letter V, okay? V is the sound V, like in English when you say vacation. Vladimir, Vitória, Vanessa. No complication here for you. And you have the sound Z, like you have in English when you say Zoom. And this happens when you have the letter S between vowels. For instance, when you say José. You see, the letter S is between O, E. So you're going to say José. All right? And you also have the sound Z when you have the letter S at the end of the word and the next word begins with a vowel. It sounds complicated in theory, but in the example, it will be clear to you. You have Carlos Alberto. Carlos ends with S, but Alberto begins with a vowel. So you're going to say Carlos Alberto. Okay? And the letter Z always sounds like Z. So you say Luz, Luzia. All right? Well, so you're going to have the sound S in all these combinations here. So let's see the examples together. Conceição, Graça, Larissa, César, Inácio, Sandra, Cristina, Afonso. What happens here? You have the letter S at the beginning of the word, Sandra. You also have the letter S before a consonant, but at the end of the syllable. So you say Cristina. You separate the syllables, and after S you see a consonant. Cristina. And you also have Afonso. And with Afonso, you see the letter S right after the letter N. So after a consonant. Afonso. I'll repeat. Sandra, Cristina, Afonso. So the sound will be S. I know it's a lot of rules to follow, but as I told you, try to remember them and just listen to a lot of Portuguese. And, well, this phenomenon, I'm going to explain it to you very fastly because it's very specific. So you will have the sound sh in these situations, but only in Portugal and also in the city of Rio de Janeiro. Okay, in the region of Rio de Janeiro, you do have that. But in all of Brazil, you do not have that except Rio. Okay, so this sound sh will be at words like dois, festa, esqui, 10. Okay, this is the way someone from Rio de Janeiro would pronounce these words. Okay, but this is only there because in general Brazilian Portuguese you will say dois, festa, esqui, 10. I am only telling you that because you may want to travel to Rio de Janeiro, it's a beautiful city, and you see that people over there, they make very constantly the sound sh, 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 like show in English, and this is why. Okay, but you do not have to make the sound if you don't want to. Okay, many Brazilians do not do this sound in these situations here. All right, and one important principle will be that you have the E always and the E at the end of the word with the sound J, like when you have in English jeans. Okay, which is why you are going to say Diego, tarde, and even desculpe. All right, so this is almost everywhere in Brazil, almost everywhere. So let's say it's standardized. Okay, in some regions you will say Diego tarde, but this is not general. Okay, it's very specific. And then you have the combinations TI always and TE at the end of the word. And in this case, you're going to have the sound that you have in match. Okay, so you're going to have Tiago, noite. Okay, so I'll repeat. Diego, tarde. Tiago, noite. And this is general Brazilian Portuguese. All right? Well, something that's also very unsettling because you're going to write the letter L at the end of the word and also at the end of the syllable before a consonant. You're going to write L, but you're going to pronounce U, which is why you say Miguel, Thelma. Okay, so this is the way it sounds. Miguel, Thelma. Just as I told you. I know it's unsettling, but it's the way that we speak. Okay? And then you have dinheiro. Dinheiro, this combination, has the sound of cognac. Okay? Dinheiro. And this combination here, CH, has the sound of show. So you say cachaça. And you have the combination LH with the sound of, well, L and E, a tiny E. So you're going to say mulher, mulher. And you have the letter H, which has no sound in Portuguese, except in these combinations here. But in this word here, you only say homem. You do not pronounce anything here. Okay? And now let's see a very interesting thing in Portuguese, and is the way to pronounce the letter R. So we are beginning with the letter D. Just take the English word dollar, okay, and pay attention. How do you pronounce dollar in English? Well, you have the tongue and you have your front teeth, and the tongue is going to touch your front teeth, okay, when you say dollar, okay? The tongue is moving slowly and there is a lot of contact, and this is why you have dollar when you say in English. In Portuguese, it will be pronounced very similarly. You would say dollar, dollar, okay? And keep in mind what you did here, because you're going to do something very similar when you have the letter R inside of the word and also at the end of the word in Portuguese, in Brazil. So you're going to have the same movement of the tongue, but now it's only the tip of the tongue that is going to work here. And the contact with the front teeth will be really brief. So it's really just a tiny touch and the tongue goes back. But the tongue goes back without rolling backwards. So this is very important for you, because in English you say dollar. Pay attention what you do when you say dollar. Well, your tongue will bend backwards and we do not do that in Portuguese. Generally, we don't. Okay, so you have to stop this tendency to roll back your R. Okay, do not do that because that's not standardized Brazilian Portuguese. So you're going to have just the tip of your tongue that does this and goes back. Just the tip, quick movement. And the tongue just does that, doesn't do that. Okay, so you're going to say in Portuguese, Marcos, Mário, Murilo, André. Okay, this is how it works. Just like this. Okay, so tip of the tongue, quick and back. Okay, and well, after seeing this, what you do with your tongue, let your tongue rest. You won't work with it anymore because you're going to use your throat when you have the letter R at the beginning of the word or twice inside the word. So in this case, you're going to use your throat, and like you have when you say hot in English. So you're going to say Rafael, Renata, Raquel, Morro. So your tongue is just resting, okay? It's just, well, chilling, okay? It doesn't have to do anything. It's just your throat. And you will expel the air. Here you do not expel the air, okay? You just make this movement with your tongue. But here you do Rafael, okay? And pay attention because the name Marcos can be pronounced a little differently depending on the place that you're in Brazil. Okay, I come from São Paulo and we will pronounce just like I just told you. So you're going to say Marcos in the southern regions of Brazil. But in many other regions, people will pronounce Marcos with the sound that we saw here. Okay, the same thing with the word tarde, which means afternoon, as you know. Tarde, I pronounce it with the São Paulo accent, which is tarde. But in many other regions in Brazil, people will pronounce tarde instead. So with sound, like hot in English. Okay? So beware of this difference. Is what happens when the letter R is inside the word right before a consonant, like Marcos or tarde. Okay, this is the way many people in Brazil will pronounce. But I pronounce Marcos tarde with the tip of my tongue, not with my throat. Okay, just a tiny observation to you. And we're going to see some words where you have both sounds. So you're going to say Roberto, Romário, Rodrigo. This is the way I pronounce in São Paulo, but Roberto will be pronounced differently in other regions, as I told you, with the throat. So you have Roberto in many regions, okay, both with your throat, okay, Roberto. But in São Paulo and in South Brazil, Roberto. All right? Well, this is the hardest part of the Brazilian pronunciation, okay? The hardest for you that speak English. Try not to roll your tongue backwards. But when you're traveling in Brazil, you may hear that some people do roll the tongue backwards. And this is very regionally specific, okay? So people may say tarde, and this happens in some regions in Brazil, but it's not generally so, all right? And my advice is to pronounce the sounds of Brazil with the sounds that I just taught you here, okay? So don't try to get English sounds into your Brazilian Portuguese. It doesn't work like this. Just use the sounds that we learned here, okay? For instance, when you have Murilo, you have the letter O here at the end. You're going to pronounce as U, as I told you, Murilo, and you are done, okay? So don't try to pronounce it as you would think with your English brain. It doesn't work like this. Give your English brain a rest. Try to work with your Brazilian brain. You're getting a whole new brain now, and you're going to use this brain to speak in Portuguese, okay? Or when you have the word morro, okay? You're going to say morro, okay? You're not going to say moho or something like this, okay? We wouldn't say it this way in Brazil. We say morro, okay? So don't try to get English sounds where they don't belong. Work with the Brazilian sounds and you are golden, okay? Well, at the end of the lesson, you'll find a summary with the most important information that we saw together. I'm not going to repeat because it's no new info for you here, okay? So just take your time, do the exercises, and I hope you want to keep on learning because, well, the course goes on. You're going to learn the Brazilian basics so you can start communicating in this beautiful language that you're discovering now. So thank you very much and see you soon. Obrigada e até logo!